Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, good whatever time of day it is and whatever part of the world you're at right now. Welcome back, and today we're going to do a lesson on quadratics and introducing you to the standard form, what the graph of quadratics looks like, and the type of parabolas, and even the axis of symmetry and the vertex. And then we're going to cover a few examples. So let's go ahead and jump right in. So, the standard form of all quadratic equations is y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. Now, the graph of a quadratic equation is called a parabola, or a parabola as I like to refer to it. But basically, the parabola is the U-shaped curve when you graph a parabola. For example, when graphing a parabola or a quadratic where a is positive, and remember, a is the leading term. So for this first one, the a right here is positive 1. So when a is positive, the parabola is facing up, or it opens up. So when a is positive, the graph opens up. All right? Now, vice versa. When a is negative, remember, a is the leading coefficient. In this example, a is negative 1. So when a is negative, the graph opens down. Okay? So when a is negative, the graph opens down. All right? Now, all parabolas have an axis of symmetry. The axis of symmetry is basically a vertical line that's kind of invisible, but it's the vertical line that divides the parabola into two equal parts. So, for example, if I was looking back at that first example that I colored in blue, the axis of symmetry would be about right here. And if we were to fold the parabola over that line, it should be right on top of itself. And for the red one, it might be about right there. Okay, it's not exact, but that's pretty much the idea, is that axis of symmetry is a vertical line that pretty much divides the parabola into two equal parts. Now, the formula for axis of symmetry is x equals negative b divided by 2a. And obviously, a and b would come from labeling your quadratic, okay, with a, b, and c. Now, the vertex is the turning point or the elbow of the parabola. So going back to these examples here, right here where I'm highlighting in green, that is the actual vertex. The yellow dotted line is the axis of symmetry, but the vertex is the point on the parabola where it changes directions. Okay? So, for example, this vertex is called a minimum because it's at the bottom. It's the lowest point on the graph. And this vertex here is called a maximum because it's the highest point on the graph. Okay? Now, let's go ahead and take a look at a few examples to figure out how we determine the axis of symmetry, the vertex, and then we'll actually sketch it out, okay? So remember, we're going to label our A, B, and C. So A, B, and C, and for this example, A is 1, okay? Now, the formula for the axis of symmetry is x equals negative b divided by 2a. Well, that's going to give us x is equal to negative b is 8, so that's negative, and then in parentheses we put positive 8, and then 2 times positive 1, because a is positive 1. When we work that out, we get negative 8 divided by positive 2, which is equal to negative 4. So now we found the axis of symmetry to be x equals negative 4. Alright, now let's go ahead and do the vertex. Well, how do we find the vertex? We have to plug in x equals negative 4 into the actual quadratic equation. So we have y equals x is negative 4, so that's negative 4 squared, plus 8 times x, which is negative 4, plus 15. And now we just go ahead and work that out. That's going to become positive 16 minus 32 plus 15. And when we keep going, that's going to become negative 16 plus 15, which equals negative 1. So our vertex, and when we write our vertex, we're writing it as a point, an ordered pair. So this is the y value, and we already have our x value, which was negative 4. So our vertex is negative 4 comma negative 1. Okay? And now the last thing we're going to look at is the sketch of the graph. So if we were to just sketch this real quick, and let's see here. So we know we're going to have a parabola that's facing up because a is positive, right? Right here, a is positive. So that means that it's facing up, okay? Now, we want to put our vertex. Our vertex is at negative 4 comma negative 1, okay? And our axis of symmetry would be x equals 4, which is right here, okay? And there we go. So we know our graph should be facing up. The axis of symmetry is at x equals negative 4, and the vertex is negative 4 comma positive 1. Let's take a look at the second example. So now for the second one, once again, we have to label our quadratic equation, A, B, and C. And we can see here that A is actually a negative, right? So since A is negative, that means we're going to have something facing down, right? Let's go ahead and figure out that axis of symmetry. It's x equals negative b divided by 2a, which is going to give us negative b is positive 10, divided by 2a, which is 2 times negative 1. So when we finish doing it, it's going to be negative 10 divided by negative 2, which equals positive 5. So our axis of symmetry is x equals 5. Now we need to find our vertex. So for our vertex, we plug in what the x value is. The x is 5, so we have to plug that into our quadratic. Y equals negative x squared, so that's negative parentheses 5 squared, plus 10 times 5 minus 23. So as we're working this one out, this is going to become negative 5 plus 50 minus 23. Negative 25 plus 50 is positive 25. So that's positive 25 minus 23, which is going to equal positive 2. Okay? Now that we know that the y value of the vertex is positive 2, and we already have the x value, which is 5, our vertex is 5 comma positive 2. Okay? And now if we are to do our simple little sketch here, right? We already know the graph is going to be facing down because a was negative. And we know that our vertex is positive 5, positive 2. And we know that our axis of symmetry is at x equals positive 5. And back for number 1 for that example, we'll put x equals negative 4 for the axis of symmetry. Alright? And that will conclude our lesson for today. Have a great day.